I'm Rachel Edidin.
And I'm Miles Stokes.
And we are the co-hosts of Rachel and Miles Explain the X-Men, a weekly podcast where we walk listeners through the ins, outs, and retcons of our very favorite superhero soap opera.
We're also the co-hosts of Rachel and Miles Review the X-Men,
which you are watching right now.
Where we talk about all the X books that come out each week and tell you all about them.
So this week I notice is a little different in that you are dressed as apparently Adam X the Extreme. Can we discuss that?
The finest the 90s ever had to offer. Look at these spikes, they're amazing. Yes. So I'm doing this in honor of Halloween and also in honor of our stealth cosplay contest.
So tell me more about stealth cosplay, Miles.
So stealth cosplay is where you can dress up kind of as a fictional character, but in a way that conceivably won't get you looked at as a complete lunatic because it's sort of like street clothes.
Okay, I kind of get that.
And that's actually what you're doing too, right, Rachel?
It is not. What I am doing is plainclothes cosplay, which is also part of the same contest. And that is when you dress up as a non-costume version of a character. This is, in fact, exactly what Scott Summers' Cyclops wears through seasons 1 and 2 of X-Men Evolution whenever he's not in costume. I even tucked my sweater into my pants.
That's dedication.
Right?
Check out our contest. It's at rachelandmiles.com where you can find all of our other stuff as well.
Meanwhile, let's review some comics.
First up, we have Death of Wolverine, Deadpool and Captain America #1 by Jerry Duggan and Scott Collins.
Whoa. So, we're reviewing a Deadpool and Captain America book. Neither of those are X-Men, dude.
Okay, see, I thought about this because, yes, Deadpool is not an X-Man.
Deadpool is so not an X-Man.
Right. And that's why we never covered Deadpool stuff. But this is a Death of Wolverine tie-in, and it is about the legacy of Wolverine and the effect he had on these two characters that he does have a history with. So we're going to make an exception, but we are going to keep this one quick. So,
all right, as long as we're clear that they're not,
Not at all. So, this is a one-shot. It's in the giant Death of Wolverine event that is currently dominating about half of the Marvel Universe, the half that's not dominated by Axis. And this is about Captain America, who's now an old man for complicated reasons, and Deadpool basically cleaning up Wolverine's place, finding out that there are some artifacts out there that have his blood on them, and trying to track those down so that bad guys like AIM don't make a Wolverine clone, because as we all know, Wolverine clones are like the #1 export of the Marvel Universe.
I don't get why this is only an issue after his death. I mean, people cloned him during his life, too.
I think the main reason is because if you put Death of Wolverine on top of a book right now, it's going to sell more copies. But the fact is, it's actually a really decent issue. It's got some very good comic timing. It's got some well-written dialogue. It's got humor. It's got pathos, and it actually has an ending that I did not see coming that was kind of deep and fascinating. So, is it core? Absolutely not. Is it a good read? Surprisingly, yes. So we're going to go from right here into our next sort of relevant tie-in, which is Axis Revolutions #1.
It's all crossovers all the time.
Pretty much. We're just living in a crossover world.
This is also not an X book, but it is by two of our very, very favorite X writers, Dennis Hopeless and Cy Spurrier, each doing a short story.
Yeah, so Hopeless... Now, the way this works, they did the same thing with Avengers vs. X-Men. They had an A vs. X series where people just fought. Not even remotely essential. It's basically short stories that happen around the Axis event. So yeah, the first story by Dennis Hopeless, it's a Spider-Man story. It's basically about how you shouldn't hate people and you should have empathy. And it feels kind of like a PSA or an after-school special. That being said, it's a good PSA/after-school special.
Yeah, it's nice. It's a little bit very special episode-y, but it's as those things go, it rings true. And honestly, I find that those ring a lot truer when Spider-Man does them than most other characters, because he is just a really sincere dude.
That's a very good point.
The other thing about it is that it makes a really great contrast pairing with the other story in there.
The other story in there. All right, so this is one of our favorite creative teams, Cy Spurrier and... Tan Enquat, and it's a Doctor Strange story, and Doctor Strange is being affected by the Red Onslaught hate wave that's making everyone, hate. And what that basically means is that Doctor Strange turns from, the Sorcerer Supreme, who's very wise, into essentially magical Dr. Nemesis and just yells creative obscenities throughout, the entire story.
Oh, really? Magical Dr. Nemesis? I would go with more like magical Namor.
Very possibly, but regardless, it's basically him verbally abusing Wong and everyone around him as he tries to find an end for the hate wave. It's not an X-Men story, it's barely an Axis story, but it is hilarious. It's legitimately really funny, unless you hate Cy Spurrier, in which case you're wrong.
It's a Spurrier-Watt stopgap for a week when we don't have an issue of X-Force, which is one of our current favorite X books coming out by the same creative team.
Yeah, so here we have, like I said, two vague tie-ins. If you're just reading X stuff, honestly skip them. If you like good comics in general, you could do worse.
Next up, we have this week's first actual X book. This is All New X-Men #33, written by Brian Michael Bendis, drawn by Mahmoud Asrar. Yeah, it's solid. It's a lot of fun. The All New X-Men, these are the original 5 minus Cyclops, who's out in space, are running around the Ultimate Universe right now and having Ultimate Universe adventures in mixed case letters, which I still dig.
That's such a clever touch. I love it.
And it's a lighthearted, fun issue. This has kind of become my go-to for the Fun X series right now.
Yeah, like for me it was kind of Amazing X-Men, but this one probably does it a little bit better. I will say
significantly, I think.
With lighthearted also comes light. Not a whole lot happens. There's not a whole lot of a major character development. It's a fun book and it's enjoyable, but if you're looking for like super melodramatic soap opera stuff, maybe this isn't the issue. Maybe this isn't the title sometimes.
Or world-shaking events. But I am enjoying it. And as someone who's been sort of out of touch with the Ultimate Universe for a long time, I'm kind of looking forward to seeing how that's settled. We see that universe's X-Men for the first time at the end of this issue. And again, I get the feeling that in terms of your momentous stuff, the plot's about to pick up.
Yeah. I do also want to call out, so we love well-written teenage Jean Grey. X-Men Season 1 is one of our favorites for that reason.
And that's a question that we get pretty regularly from you guys, too, which is where to find good Jean as a viewpoint character, because that's not something that happens a lot.
Mm-hmm. And the answer is this book. This book has a great Jean Grey. She's fascinating. She's nuanced. She's not a retread of where the character's been before. That part I like a lot.
And again, bonus points here for not tying into either crossover, even if they had to skip the entire universe to do it.
Next is the Logan Legacy number 3. This one is by Kyle Higgins, Jonathan Marks on art, and Lee Loffridge on colors.
And man, I want to say about the art, these guys are doing some amazing stuff. I originally saw it and assumed that it was one painter when I first saw the art. This is beautiful.
Yeah.
This is some of the most gorgeous sort of painterly art that I've seen in a comic in a long time.
Now, this is part of the Logan Legacy event, miniseries, whatever, where we see a bunch of Wolverine tangential characters brought together in issue number 1, and then the rest of the issues before the last one are what they've been up to. And, you know, the series, it feels like it's going to be a mixed bag. It definitely has been so far. This one is a mixed issue. Rachel, like you said, the art is freaking great. It's this, like, scratchy, painty, violent thing that fits Sabretooth, the focal character, pretty well. The writing's alright. You know, he's reacting to Logan's death by basically capturing people, dressing them up as Wolverine, and then murdering them, which, on the one hand, Sabretooth's crazy and murderous. On the other hand, it seems a little too out of touch with reality for him.
It's a little silly, even for him. And,
yeah.
You know, you mentioned the art is beautiful. Something that I was thinking when we were going back through it is that I would love to see this team doing covers more than I'd like to see them doing interiors, because the art's beautiful and the composition is beautiful. But it's not as narrative as I would want and need it to be. And it sort of works for Sabretooth because he's a character who's very visceral and not very sort of cognitive and sequential. But I don't know if he could really sustain a series, and I don't know that it really sustains a full issue.
Yeah, the issue feels very quick. I mean, even if you're really lovingly poring over the art in every panel, there aren't a lot of words, and the art doesn't tell the story that the missing words would need it to.
Yeah, it's evocative rather than narrative, which is beautiful. And again, it works for Sabretooth, but I'd rather see it for interstitial short sequences or for covers than as a full issue.
Mm-hmm. The Logan Legacy, you know, it's a pretty blatant cash-in. There's no doubt about that. There's some good stuff. There's some diamonds in that capitalistic rough. But as for whether we'd recommend buying it, if you really like the characters, if you really like anything having to do with Wolverine, sure. Otherwise, you know, probably skippable.
Yeah, there's interesting stuff that's happening in it. And obviously, there are really good creative teams working on it. We mentioned that the second issue is a great standalone X-23 story. You know, you do you. Last but not least, and last on several fronts, because it's the last issue of this series, we have Wolverine and the X-Men number 11. It's written by Jason Latour. It is drawn by, again, a whole mess of artists doing the Logan tribute. Let's get those names up on the screen for a sec.
Kabam!
And speaking of names on the screen, there is one in all the X-Books this week that I don't remember seeing in them before.
Yeah, not just X-Books. Jack Kirby. So you may have heard Jack Kirby's family reached a settlement with Marvel recently, and it looks like part of that settlement is that all the characters he was so instrumental in helping create, or in some cases practically creating himself,
or some cases actually creating himself,
he's now fully credited for in a way he wasn't always before, and that is really heartwarming to see. It's about damn time, in my opinion.
Yeah, no kidding.
But yeah, let's talk about the book.
So, story-wise, this continues what we started last issue, which is a journalist and former lover of Wolverine who's writing a retrospective about his life and is interviewing various students and faculty at and around the Jean Grey School and a few other superheroes about that and about him. In this issue in particular, she talks to Spider-Man, Peter Parker, which is charming.
And I just want to jump in here. So we've already heard that the series that's going to be replacing this one is going to be Spider-Man and the X-Men, where Spider-Man's like a guidance counselor at the Jean Grey Institute.
He is so not qualified for that job.
Seeing Spider-Man in the X-Men's world so much right here, in sort of an X book, makes me actually really excited for that book. If that one has a creative team that does it right, it could be hilarious and heartwarming at the same time. I'm really psyched.
I'm looking forward to that one a lot too. Also, finally, Storm, and appropriately bookending the series, the character who was sort of the defining character of the first Wolverine in the X-Men series, and gradually kind of fell out of that role in this one, Quentin Quire.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're going to have a character that's really emblematic of both the successes and failures of Wolverine in this sort of headmaster role that he was in when his life ended for the next 10 minutes that he's dead, I think that's definitely Quire, you know? That's Wolverine really trying to redeem somebody and, by extension, redeem a world that may or may not be redeemable.
Yeah, Quire I've talked about before as one of my favorite characters, kind of the enfant terrible of the current generation of mutant teenagers. And this issue, I've been up and down with how Latour's written him as compared to Jason Aaron. Jason Aaron's run on this book was so tight. And I think Latour's has been good, but it hasn't quite lived up to what came before it. This issue and the last one are good. Like, they're great. They feel right. They feel like a good end for the series, and they feel like the series kind of reaching a level that it hadn't previously.
Agreed. And I think it might be worth addressing, at least briefly, just, Wolverine and the X-Men Volume 2. This book has only made it to 11 issues, and it was following the very acclaimed run by Jason Aaron on the first volume. So, what do you think? Hit, miss, overall?
I think overall hit. I don't think it's a home run the way that the first series was, but I think it's well worth reading, and it's especially well worth... I wouldn't read it alone. I would read it as a follow-up to the first series. And I think, honestly, in terms of the Logan Legacy, this is the best issue and the best single story we've seen come out of it.
The best Death of Wolverine tie-in? Yeah. I mean, I think I might actually kind of buy that.
And that, for me, feels like a really fitting end to this book. I've talked before, maybe not here, but it's a running theme in my life. I like things that have arcs and that end. I like stories that are told. And, you can revisit them, but I like complete stories. And this feels like a really good ending. It's kind of, you can say it's kind of a cheat, it's a montage, but it works. It works really well, and it works really well with the character Wolverine had evolved into, and with the school that he'd built is emblematic of that. It's also got stunning creative work. I mean, there's a sequence of Wolverine and Storm in Japan that's drawn, I think, by Robbie Rodriguez, who's, I believe, currently on Ghost Rider, that is just stunning. That's some of the best and coolest art. And a lot of times having a bunch of different artists on a book feels gimmicky. Here, it's covering so much ground and it is such a montage that it feels like the art fitting and supporting the story as it evolves and changes. And it's terrific. The ending is great. The ending was satisfying for me in terms of both wrapping up the series, in terms of the Death of Wolverine, and in terms of the Quentin Quire arc, which surprised me. I was not expecting to like that as much as I did. So yeah, very, very solid book. Highly recommend. Even if you haven't been following the series, the last 2 issues of it, I think, stand alone pretty well.
Agreed. All right, so what is our issue of the week?
Miles, our issue of the week is, I think, pretty definitely Wolverine and the X-Men 11.
Yeah, that was pretty stellar. I liked it a lot. Good end to a series, good second part of a 2-parter, good issue in general, great writing, great art. You kind of hit all the bases on this one.
Yeah, every job, it has a lot of jobs to do, and it does every single one of them very, very gracefully. Good end to a series. Good job, Latour. So, Miles, now that we've got the issue of the week out of the way, what's our panel of the week? We had some really strong contenders.
We did, yeah. This time, I think it's going to be this panel right here, which is from the Logan Legacy number 3, the Sabretooth issue. As much as the issue itself is really mixed as far as quality, this here is beautiful. I mean, look at it. It's like a freaking collage with there's tons of old art, some of which I recognized, and just a really messy, violent feel that reflects Creed's, like, shattered, angry psyche.
Wolverine kind of a simultaneous aggressor and victim, because that's the image of the spikes. That's him getting his adamantium ripped out, right?
It's at the very least evocative of it, yeah. And the colors are just this like rage red orange that just, again, it really gets the feel of what the book is trying to get across.
Yeah, we talked about the creative alchemy on this book and just how well it captures Sabretooth's weird, muddled, and very visceral rather than logical interiority. And this spread is, I think, an example of that done right and used to tremendous effect.
All right, and that's it. Relatively light week, especially given the two of the issues were just sort of vaguely relevant tie-ins.
If you want to hear more about the X-Men from us, our podcast, Rachel and Miles Explain the X-Men, goes up every Sunday at rachelandmiles.com and on iTunes and Stitcher.
And the next episode is a fun one. We're going to be checking in with the New Mutants once again as they go to a place that thinks it's a lost Roman colony, and maybe it is, and maybe it isn't. They kind of go back and forth.
We did this as a cold open once. Nova Roma's terrible.
It's truly terrible. But it's when the book kind of finds its voice, and we're basically going to be covering the stuff that leads up to the legendary Bill Sienkiewicz run of that title.
Meanwhile, at rachelandmiles.com, you can find visual companions to the episodes, you can find essays, you can find written posts, and you can find more material, including right now our stealth and plainclothes cosplay contest, which will be running until... I believe a week from today. We're going to be participating in at least the next video. Obviously, we're not eligible for the contest itself. I should have mentioned before that it is sponsored by TV Store Online, and it is guest judged by the amazing ex-fashion expert, Chris Anka. So, yeah, we hope you'll join us.
Yeah, and thanks, as always, to our Patreon supporters. You guys make all of this possible. You're awesome. If you want to become a Patreon supporter, go to rachelandmiles.com, check it out. And in the meantime, remember, spikes, to stay extreme.
Okay, so given that I'm from an alternate continuity, help me out here. Are you actually a Summers brother?
Is Adam X the Extreme Summers brother?
Yeah, is Adam X the Extreme Summers brother?
Well, I would like to point out that I am of the Naramani Shi'ar lineage, and...
The what?
Yeah, okay, so Lilandra, so the Empress of Space, who's
What?
a bird, her brother was crazy and captured Cyclops' space pirate dad's wife and impregnated her.
Wait, what?